What's up, guys? We're going to replace this oil pump. I got an OEM gasket coming. Here's the thing about the gasket. The OEM gasket, I don't know what it's called. I've seen them before. I've never actually had the OEM gasket from this car in my hand. But from the pictures I look at, they're blue and they look shiny. Like, have you ever had one of those gaskets where, like, it's a paper gasket like this, but when you touch it, it's smooth, like it's dipped in wax? I think that's what the OEM gasket is. I think it's a paper gasket just like this, but it's like dipped in wax or like a plastic. IMR is the only place all morning I've been trying to find an OEM gasket, and no one can get it to me sooner than like a week. I called IMR, and I think he actually went and got me a gasket, so it should be here tomorrow. They came in clutch. They also got me all new bolts. We were talking about possibly this block being stripped out. I'm gonna take this all out. I'm gonna try to use the same size tap, just run it in there, clean the threads out, see if they're gummed up or anything like that. I don't know how many times these bolts have been used, so they might be stretched. I'm just gonna try it with the same size bolts, brand new, and clean the threads up on the block. And hopefully the OEM gasket is made out of different material and it's not just paper. All right, we got the oil pan off. Now you're gonna take this off. It's these bolts, obviously. If you've seen my other videos the past couple days, I've had these off 90 times. All right, let's pull this off. I'm gonna record it so you guys can see if I screwed up the gasket. I mean, I really don't think so. I don't even know where it was leaking from. The gasket looks fine to me. And the first time I seen that it was leaking from the top, I seen it coming from this corner. So it was coming out of that hole and coming up around this gasket. This gasket is soaking wet right there. That makes sense because I couldn't get this corner to get tight. But the second time, once I did get that tight, I saw it leak right from over here. Dude, I hope there's not a crack in this block. Take it off, clean it all up, make sure this block's flat. Yeah, do you see those holes are super short? You can definitely see the bottom of those holes. They don't go deep. Hopefully he didn't like crack one of these. It might be cracked in there. Okay, this is gonna be impossible for me to show you on camera. It's definitely been smushed. You can just tell. It's got like that aluminum stress cracks in it. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know how to explain that to you. It's not smooth and it's not like it's been cut. It's like that stretchy aluminum looking. It's right down there. That spot right there is like it's been smushed. And then all down here, there's like stress cracks in it. Like this has been torqued down way too hard. And right there, there's like a bulge. You see all those stress cracks down the side of this where like it was smushed real hard? Like this has got like the circles in it, like when it was machined. And since he bottomed those bolts out, he might have put hairline cracks on the block and all these bolt holes might be leaking. I mean, there's oil in all of them, but I also just took off a gasket that was covered in oil. These are not deep at all. Like here's a piece of tie wire. It only goes in that deep before it hits the block. Worst case scenario right now is that he forced those long bolts in here and cracked the block. I'm gonna run a tap through there, clean them up even more. Adrian got all new bolts, just got a whole new kit of every bolt for this car pretty much. So I just wanna clean these threads up so they bite. And then I don't know what to do if he cracked it back here. All right, I got these pretty much all cleaned up. Now, I don't know if they tap these at the engine builder, but you see how I run the pick and it just stays on the threads? This one right here, boom, goes into a hole. Is that hole supposed to be there? One of you guys were saying that you thought one of these holes actually goes into one of the valleys, but why would it be on the side like that? Okay, if you end up noticing that, that's normal. I just called 3SX because I was freaking out about it. They said they had multiple blocks torn apart and they all do that. And he said he's got a couple of them with none of these bolts in. It actually is just where this bolt meets it. So I guess this bolt comes up and meets right there, and that's just normal. So I am gonna put silicone on all my threads though this time around. I know a lot of people do that and I didn't do that, but I'm going to. It might be leaking out one of these thread holes somewhere. Might just be seeping out. Everything's tapped. Everything's cleaned up. Then scrub this thing down with brake cleaner. Guys, back out here. Pretty much been a week. Last time I was out here was Thursday. It's now Wednesday. I don't know where I left off. I haven't went over any of that footage, just to be honest with you. I ran a tap through all of those threads. they cleaned up really nice with the same size. There's a bunch of silicone in some of them. There's little burrs in other ones they cleaned up. I got bolts for days now. I actually got some of the bolts from the dealership. So I got some OEM oil pump bolts. Here is the holy grail of gaskets, at least in my eyes. I've been looking for this, trying to get this forever. Don't touch it, don't look at it, don't breathe on it. I'm not gonna be able to show you on camera. It's thinner, and it's also made out of almost like a rubbery wax material. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's definitely not paper. And it's just a little bit thinner. You guys aren't gonna be able to see on camera. It's not half as flimsy as a paper gasket. It's nice, stays stiffer. It just feels better. Let's hope the new pump, new gasket, all new bolts fixes it. One more thing that I think I'm going to do. There's some cotton in there because I use Q-tips. Here, real quick, I'll just show you guys. I don't think I recorded that. So I just took, you know, regular rubbing alcohol, put it on a Q-tip, and I went in here and I cleaned out all these threads, made them spotless. Because I was thinking about putting some silicone in there just to help seal up these bolts in case he did crack something. With those being torqued down so much from the engine builder, with longer bolts at that, he might have cracked something in the back. Called a couple machine shops, and I went over this with them too, because, you know, you look online, some people say if you put silicone in the threads, you'll never get the right torque, and this and that. So if you watch when I put the flywheel on, I'm going to put silicone in the holes themselves, so the bolt doesn't squeeze silicone out onto the gasket or onto the oil pump. I put just a little dab of silicone on the inside of these. When the bolt goes in, it'll push silicone in instead of forcing it out if you put it on the bolt threads. Like, if you put it on the bolt threads, when you screw it in, it'll squeeze itself out. If you put it in the hole, when you put the bolt in, it'll push it in. So I think I'm just gonna put a little dot in there. This one that's got that hole, I was looking up, some people were saying that they were leaking from that. Talked to a bunch of people that have said that they've pretty much filled this with silicone. Everything screws in really nice now. I'm gonna wipe this all down with alcohol again. Make sure the surface is clean. I'm gonna go over this one more time with a straight edge. Plenty of you guys keep asking me that in the comments of the last video, asking if I did this. Okay, I don't know how much we are going to be able to record. I'm gonna put a drop of silicone in all of these threads. We got an hour at the most to get this thing together completely. So you guys have seen me put this back together a bunch of times. I don't think I'm gonna record it. I'm just gonna explain to you what I did. Real quick, this is a new oil pump. I'm gonna put the pickup tube on here. It's right here. I got a new gasket right here. But you definitely don't want this thing falling off. I cleaned these bolts. Those are factory bolts. I cleaned those with brake cleaner and then alcohol. I'm gonna put Loctite down in the thread holes. So again, when I put the bolts in, it pushes the Loctite in, not out, so it doesn't get in between the gasket. Okay, got everything cleaned up. I just set this OEM gasket on there to show you guys real quick. It lines up so much better. I have 3 paper gaskets here. None of the holes actually line up perfect like this one does. So this is definitely the way to go, OEM. Okay, it's all torqued down. I got the pulleys on. I forgot to bring the camera back on. My bad, I'm sorry. But these are all torqued to 10.8. The manual says 10. Everyone on the forum says 11. I'm just doing it kind of in the middle. Alright, boys, back out here. I don't think I turned the camera back on last night. It's all in time, so all the bolts are in and they're siliconed. They're torqued down right. All I gotta do is clean up this oil pan a little bit. I'm gonna go over it one more time, at least with alcohol. Put silicone on this and start putting it back together. And then it's gonna sit, I'm gonna let it sit for 2 days before I put oil in it. Make sure all the silicone on everything is good. Okay, I pretty much was out here all morning. Just wiping this all down, scraping it all down. Use the gray Scotch-Brite, got everything clean. Got the pan all cleaned out, wiped down with alcohol. Gonna put silicone on this. Give it about 20 minutes, then wipe down the block with alcohol, and then pretty much rush to get this on there. The biggest problem you have with doing this like this is that oil constantly wants to drip on there. Like, see, there's oil right there already. I just wiped this down. Right there, there's already a drop of oil on the block. You pretty much gotta wipe it down with alcohol, give it a minute, and put it on. Back out here, pretty sure I'm gonna start it up today. Everything's back together pretty much. I haven't really recorded much. The stuff that I have recorded, I'm probably not going to use. It's just been a lot of me like being a little crybaby. Just the past 3 days, if it could have went wrong, it's gone wrong. From breaking stuff to I dropped my brand new harmonic balancer, took a chunk out of it. So Adrian's bringing me his off of his car so we can at least start it today because that's not balanced anymore. To The oil filter housing, banjo bolt that goes to the oil feed for the turbo stripped out. I didn't even put like any amount of torque on it at all. I don't know how that even happened. To putting everything back together and then realizing that I didn't put the oil filter housing on and I had to take all the brackets back off. So sitting here doing work twice, 3 times, 4 times. It's been kind of ridiculous. It's just, this is pretty much what happens when you rush and you have to do stuff 10 times and you gotta go all the way back. It's just, if you've worked on cars, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like you sit here, you do all this stuff and then you're like, oh my God, I gotta take this all back off to do this. And that's just how it's been. I don't know how much you've seen. This is all torqued down the spec. Silicone on all the bolts, new gasket, new oil pump, new everything. New oil filter housing now. Adrian's on his way over with the harmonic balancer. We're gonna put that on, fill this thing up with oil, and start it. And if it leaks today, I'm gonna have to strip this all down, send it to a different engine builder and have it like pressure tested or something. Because there's no reason for this to leak anymore. Unless there's a small hairline crack in the block somewhere that I can't see. I think I've talked about this before, but I'm gonna repeat it. I'm sorry if I already talked about it. The very first time it was leaking, I seen it coming from this corner. And remember, I could not get this tight. I could not get this to torque. I had the torque wrench set to 10. All I did was turn and turn and turn. It felt like it was gonna get tight, turn and turn and turn. I cleaned out all the threads. They were packed full of silicone. I finally got it to torque. And then it ran longer, and it's slowly, a lot slower leak. You can't see any of this over here, because the tensioner pulley for the timing belt's right here. And then the water pump's right here. You can barely see, like you got less than an inch of space you can see right here. And I seen it coming from right here over. So I thought it was coming from this bolt. And then there is a little like plug that goes into the oil valley right under the water pump. I think I recorded some of it. It's just like a Allen bolt plug that goes in. It's part of the oil valley. I took that out. I put silicone all on that and I tightened that up because I couldn't live with myself if it was that bolt and I didn't do it. So I did that. Oil galley plug is torqued down and siliconed, so it shouldn't be leaking out of there. I'm not in a very good like mood. Like I'm not like, oh yeah, this is it, it's gonna fix it. I like constantly keep thinking like it's probably something else. Okay, got the crank pulley on. I left the belts off so I could see better again. Got the fuel pump disconnected. Got the spark disconnected. So I'm gonna turn it over for probably 10 minutes so oil can get to the top. Start it and see where we're at. Yeah, it's gonna take forever, dude. It took me like a half hour last time. Okay, well I killed 3 batteries trying to get oil. This does take forever, especially since there's a new oil pump. There's no oil in the pump. So we ended up taking off the oil pressure gauge like I did last time. It should come out of here first. And then once it comes out of here, we'll plug it back up. It should be good to go. I just gotta wait for these batteries to charge up a little bit. Forgot how much of a pain this thing is to prime. It took this long last time with the factory pump. When it was sitting right here on the ground, if any of you guys remember, I sat here and cranked and cranked and cranked and cranked. I was getting nervous. Finally had oil coming out. I was getting nervous that this oil pump wasn't gonna work. Like I did the first time, I just got nervous. I ended up taking the oil filter off. It came out of there. Then I ended up disconnecting the oil cooler. It came out of the oil cooler lines. Now it's finally coming out of the oil pressure gauge. The only other place for it to go is into the engine. I'm gonna have to clean that completely dry, clean those threads off with some alcohol to put the oil pressure gauge back on so it seals right. And then I'm gonna have to crank it for probably another 5 minutes to get it up to the top and into the turbos, and there's still a long way to go. So even though you got it coming out of here, at least be safe and crank it for at least 5 more minutes. Got good oil pressure, it's up at the top, coming out of all the orifices, got everything hooked back up. Fuel pump's hooked up, plugs are hooked back up. Let's see if she leaks. We're gonna start her up. Thing sounds great. Last time it took about a good 20 minutes because we were sitting here trying to put in time and adjust the idle. And then it finally started dripping. So we got a little bit of time. I'm gonna let this run. I'll bring you right back. Well, at least last time it was pouring out by now. Dude, we might be good. Oil pressure still good? You guys don't even understand how happy I am right now. It's been running for about 45 minutes, no leaks. Pays off to actually do it right. I'm gonna go through everything of the difference we did because I know I didn't record a lot of it, but I am just so happy about this. I've constantly been staring at it because if it leaks, I want to see exactly where it comes from. I don't think it's gonna leak, boys. I think we're in the clear. It sounds great. I'm so excited that this thing didn't leak. I have no leaks of anything anywhere. Let's go over everything that I did. It could have been one of these things. It could have been a mixture of all of these things. First, he had these long bolts in there. This is what he had in there. This is the OEM from Mitsubishi is what's supposed to be in there. You can see, I don't know if you can tell on camera or not, you see the end of these are all smushed because he ran these home. I bet you he put this together with like a small impact, just trying to hurry up, and they bottomed out on the block before the oil pump itself got tight. And then I actually did end up finding in my old OEM gasket, he gave me a bag of a bunch of parts when I picked this engine back up. But this is the same gasket that he had on there, and I actually bought the same as that gasket that he put on there. If you look right there, it's just solid. And then here's a paper OEM replacement, and then here's an actual OEM gasket right here. You see those holes? Do you see this galley right here? It goes down and also just goes back down, drains itself back into the oil pan. And maybe it's so if it does go to leak oil out of this, it can drain back into the oil pan. Maybe that's just a design that they did. And you see how there's no holes here? You see how the galley is completely indented in the gasket? You can see the line gets split right there. And it's split right there. It sits on there just like this. So if it does go to leak oil, it probably goes into this hole that's in the gasket on purpose to go into that valley and drain back into the pan. This gasket might have been fine. I just didn't want to risk it. And then obviously this was way torqued down and smushed. I'll throw those pictures up again so you can see this thing is completely smushed in a bunch of different spots. Like, there's crush marks everywhere in it. And then also, I actually noticed before I put this oil pump back on that when I took the picture, I'll throw it up right now. When I took this picture showing you guys the hole, I noticed that the block itself had really deep scratches in it. And I couldn't really see them because at this angle, I couldn't really see scratches like that. Those were like 200 grits sandpaper or something that he did. So I ended up sanding down this block, 1,000, then 1,500, then I went to 2,000 grit wet with brake cleaner and sanded down that. It could have been any one of those things, you know what I mean? Maybe those scratches that were on the block, oil might have been seeping through and past the gasket, because this gasket isn't gonna seal up a 100 grit scratch really. Probably would have, honestly, but it could have been any one of those things. It could have been the fact that it was over torqued. It could have been the fact that the bolts were too long and this never got tight on the block, so it was just leaking by. Could have been the gasket. It could have been the scratches on the block. I put silicone in all the thread holes. I used the right size bolts, and I used an OEM gasket. If you just do it right, you won't have problems. Just take your time and do it right. It just sucks that they did that, and then instead of me taking it all back apart, I kept trying to just fix it. Like, well, because I mean, the first time that I took this off, it was definitely leaking from that main seal. That's not an argument at all. There was a big hole in this seal. So it was definitely leaking oil there. So when I took this off, I replaced the seal, and then I just put it back together with the bolts that he had in there. I didn't know that the bolts were wrong. So I ended up putting it back together with the wrong bolts. And then it leaked, and I couldn't get this one tight. And that's when I started taking bolts out, and I seen that they were the wrong size. So I replaced the right bolts and got it to torque, and it still leaked. And at least everything's good now. There's no reason to complain about it anymore. It's good. I'm in the clear on oil problems, at least for now. I am going to get some wheels on this thing, and I'm going to take it down the street. I gotta get this all back together. I don't want to drive this thing with the cover off. I definitely don't want to get a rock or anything in the timing belt. At least get some sort of break-in miles on it. It's supposed to be 60 degrees the next 3 days. You know, go baby it. Keep it under like 3,000 RPM. Just take it easy. At least see how it drives. Run it through its paces. Get it going through some gears. The clutch is brand new. That's got to be broken. And then it's going to the tuner. Next video, this should be on the street. I don't want to promise you that because every time I've promised anything, I've ran into a hiccup. Hopefully I can put a video out for you guys Thursday, and then next Monday's video will actually be this thing getting tuned. That's my plan. I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully it's driving down the street.